Friends, I am thrilled to say that today we're diving into the newly released DANESSA MYRICKS Lightwork VII Freedom Palette, the latest from her Lightwork Freedom line. We saw the first Freedom Palette released last year as Lightwork VI, and today we're going into Lightwork VII, of course covering the retail details, the product details, getting into the nitty-gritty because I know you want to see the swatches. Of course, we'll have the demos and comparing Lightwork 6 and 7 just to see if this is a must for you, but I could already predict if you are a DANESSA MYRICKS fan and this is a limited edition release, just something to consider as last year's palette was also limited edition, and once it was gone, it was gone. So if you don't want that to happen to you again for Lightwork 7, just putting it out there. DANESSA MYRICKS is celebrating a milestone with this release. 7 is marketed as part of a celebration of 10 years of artistry, community, and innovation. As we've seen from DANESSA so far, she has had an incredible year, and what a way to put an exclamation point on this year with Lightwork 7. Unlike earlier palettes, 7 introduces Lightwork mattes for the first time, bringing in grounding soft matte shades to balance all the chromes and shifters. The palette is being promoted as modular, magnetic, stackable, and customizable. The brand emphasizes that you can rearrange or remove trays, incorporate your own shadows, or stack it in your kit. It's positioned as an all-over face palette, shades usable on eyes, cheeks, and potentially lips, though with disclaimers on certain shades. Again, as I mentioned, this is expected to be limited edition, and if this color story speaks to you more than Lightwork 6, again, just put it on your wish list. Lightwork 7 is currently available on DANESSAMYRICKSBeauty.com as well as Sephora and Beautylish. I bought mine when it was released exclusively early on October, I believe it was 9th, on the Sephora app, so I grabbed it right away because I learned my lesson from last year. And Lightwork 6 holds a special place in my heart because it was gifted to me by a subscriber. I'll never forget that gift, as it was just generous on her part to gift that palette to me because she wanted to see me review it. And with the initial release of Lightwork 6, I was unsure if it would be a palette that I would use often, because at that time I was starting to move away from the heavier multi-chrome finishes, realizing that I wasn't using those types of shadows as often as I did before when I started my YouTube channel. And not that I don't think they're beautiful, and at the time I just couldn't justify the purchase because I knew it would be something that I wouldn't wear as often. Although I do realize, being a YouTube beauty reviewer, sometimes you have to purchase items for the sake of review, even if it's a product that you wouldn't use often. But Lightwork 6 was a hit, and the introduction of the Lightwork soft mattes and the fact that the tray is like a translucent rose gold, aesthetically it's more appealing to me this time around. In addition to where you can buy Lightwork 7, it retails for $128, but considering that it is entirely magnetic, all the components are mostly not only the base of the palette, but the actual sextets, the individual pans, and the tray cover itself, alongside the mirror that's positioned on the center that's used as a cover. So you could stack the palettes however you wish, and you basically use the mirror as a cover to protect the shadows if you don't want to use the entire palette but just the smaller sections. And again, since this release is celebrating a 10-year milestone for DANESSA MYRICKS Beauty, Lightwork 7 is introducing 10 different finishes in this palette. So of course we'll go over each, the colors and all those descriptions, because I know we love to get into the swatches. This palette is made in China and has a 12-month suggested shelf life. Now what that means, with the brand's testing and how far they went with it, established that these powders will perform best within the 12-month mark. But I have plenty of eyeshadow palettes in various finishes that are well beyond their suggested shelf life, have not turned, don't start to smell, they don't have mold. So make sure, if you wish to use these shadows beyond their suggested shelf life, that you pack them well, you store them well, dry, cool areas of your home. Please do not store makeup in your bathroom, please. And if your makeup happens to be in a room that is subject to high levels of moisture, I don't know, they have devices that reduce moisture in the air. I know they have like humidifiers to increase it, but I'm sure if you live in those conditions, you more or less figured it out. What I personally like to do is keep these little silica gel satchels, bags that come in with a lot of stuff that I order, and just put them in my makeup drawers. Not only with my makeup, but with my brushes as well. And I think this kind kind of helps to keep the air moisture levels low, because unfortunately that does impact the longevity of your makeup, and especially with more specialized finishes as you see here. Yes, fresh and untouched. So this is a first impressions family. A first impressions with Lightwork VII, although I am familiar with DANESSA's Lightwork Freedom Palette series. Again, as I said, I've tried Lightwork VI from last year. I have the review video. I can't recall if I filmed another one doing more looks, but nevertheless, you could check out my DANESSA MYRICKS playlist down below in the description box if you want to explore more DANESSA videos on my channel. So we're celebrating a 10-year anniversary. We got 10 different finishes, and this release happened on October 10. 10-10. What a great setup, huh? The palette is arranged into 3 sections in warm neutrals, wearable taupe plums, and effortless cool tones. Upon first glance, I actually think Lightwork VII might be more wearable and maybe a little more accessible, not as intimidating as Lightwork VI, because Lightwork VI brought the heat, but I think you can recognize that Lightwork VII is a little more, not completely monochromatic, but I think they have more deliberate color stories. So why don't we start with mini palette 1 named warm neutrals, and each individual section has its own diagram and product details on the back, as well as the shade names, and underneath each pan you have the shade name and the formula type. I'm following the list here on this Instagram post, so if it appears out of order, I'm just following what they have on here, if you don't mind. First, we have Sand. One of our Lightwork soft mattes is a neutral sandy beige matte. Ooh, and we got rooted a baked terracotta brown matte. Oh, that's smooth. And compared to what we've seen in Lightwork VI, I think those were named Velvet. More like a hybrid formula, creamy on the feel, but applies like a powder. These feel more like traditionally formulated powders, but are still soft nonetheless. Next, we have Golden Child. Was also known as an elastin multichrome, and is an opal white with gold to green shift. Elastin is an appropriate name to describe this texture. It is smooth but glassy, and the finger application is even. You could use a brush, but something that DANESSA likes to achieve in her formulation is to make these textures finger forward, brush optional, meaning they of course could work with a number of different types of brushes. But if you are a finger painter of sorts and you like to tap and blend with your finger, then these textures will do fine with that application choice. Next, we have Warm, an elastin sheer metallic, as opposed to Golden Child's elastin multichrome, is a metallic copper with gold to pink shift. Let's swatch that again. It is incredibly smooth in pan, and again, it just has that wet look on the skin when applied. Ooh, this feels creamy. We have Enchanted. Oh my goodness. What is this one called? Let us find out. Enchanted is a hyper shine metallic, appropriately named. A smoky chartreuse with a bronze shift. Holy moly. So you see, you don't have to pick up a ton like I did. It was for the sake of the swatch, as you detect a little bit of texture here. But once you smooth those bits out, my goodness, hyper shine indeed. And lastly, we have Mother Earth, a velvet chrome, a forest green with an eggplant shift. Oh, I like that. That's the one. All over the lid, it has that multi-chrome shift finish. I love the fact that it has a shift, but it does make it wearable as like a go-to all over lid smoky shade that doesn't appear too crazy multi-chrome, and you could wear those 100%. But compared to what we see in Lightwork VI to what we see now, it's almost like these are like grounded in their shift color choices in here. That's pretty. My gosh, warm neutrals is looking nice. Up next, we have our wearable taupe plum section. The only soft matte in this section, we have Toasted, a toasted mauve matte. Ooh, that's mauve-y, but it's not so mauve-y purple that I think it will appear ashy through my crease. It will provide beautiful structure without it looking too cool tone. Next, we have Love Potion, the second elastin multichrome, and this is a white rose quartz with a gold shift. The elastin multichrome so far is quickly becoming one of my favorite formulas from DANESSA. I mean, the ease of pickup and application and that wet shine effect it has on the skin again, is remarkable. The second one you find here from the Warm palette. Ugh. Next, we have Wish, the second Elastin Sheer Metallic, an iced pink metallic. Ooh, that's pretty. Next is Guiding Light, which feels like one of the hyper shines, but let's confirm together. Oh, never mind, I was wrong. Guiding Light is a foil flake metallic, but doesn't it appear ultra shiny? An antique pewter pink metallic. My goodness, that looks like pure liquid metal on the skin. Even though it says foil, it does melt nicely onto the skin, just as long as you flatten it out. You don't pick up too much. I think if you start to pick up too much, it will look textured on the list, but we'll get to that when we roll into the demo. Next, we have Spellbound, the only Hyper Shine Chrome Metallic, and this is a magenta with an emerald green shift. Woo-wee! Classic magenta with the green. You see that as I shift my arm up? Oh, that's pretty. This is the favorite. That eggplant shift on that smoky, did they say smoky chartreuse? I forgot the description, but my gosh, that one is in the favorites. And lastly, from this section, we have Open Heart, the only foil flakes chrome. This is an electric purple with a smoky green shift. So these have the foil flakies that I think Danessa's insistence on having these types of finishes is because they look like liquid metal when blended on the skin. So again, you just have to pick up enough for what you need on the lid and just press those flakes onto the skin to ensure that liquid metal finish. And lastly, we have Mini Palette 3 Effortless Cool Tones. It's almost like Xenon is here with the multi-chrome blues on top. First, we have Magic Moon, our soft matte, and a concrete gray. Oh, I love the gray. It has a little bit, just a little bit of blue, although probably emphasized, especially when paired with the blues here. And the last soft matte, we have Grounded, a midnight black. Oh my goodness. Whoa, whoa, that is rich. I'm running out of arm room. Oh, I just have poor arm space management skills. Next, we have Northern Lights, the only velvet metallic, and this is a smoky platinum. Oh, that's your glam eye right there. Done. Thank you for coming. Next, we have Dreamer, our one chrome topper. This is an aqua blue with a periwinkle shift. Ooh, that's pretty. And you can kind of see that flaky texture in the pan, but again, a little goes a long way. If I just lightly tap, you can see that's all you need, all required to create that wet look on the lid. My goodness. Next, we have Mother's Love. Oh my goodness. The Hyper Shine Metallic, a royal blue metallic. Yes, indeed. It's almost like a cerulean. It's pretty. And lastly, we have Star Power, the last of the Hyper Shine Metallics. That's a molten silver with a dusty blue shift. Oh, there's the blue. You see that? Ooh, that's pretty. All our swatches completed from Danessa's Lightwork VII. I can't wait to now start the demo because I'm looking forward to experimenting with the different finger applications and brush types that I have. So with that said, let's prep these lids and I'll be right back. Going in with Suku's eye primer, don't know if this is an ideal formula for Danessa's finishes, but it's the only one I have. I would recommend that you use a primer that perhaps is a little more heavy duty in ensuring that these textures don't break down quickly on the lid. This is a little more lightweight in terms of priming ability, but it's okay. It's the only one I have and we'll go forward with it. Starting off with the neutral palette, if you're looking at this and you're like, oh, I don't know, probably one of the easier ways to build a look that doesn't appear too intense is to lightly pick up rooted, making up names just off the bat, and let's softly toss that into the crease. And in terms of this soft matte formula, it's smooth, it applies evenly on the eyes. I'm starting off lightly so I can gently build the color here, and following up with sand to diffuse the edges of Rooted. Now, my go-to strategy would be to apply Golden Child right on the lid because I think that's going to be one of the simplest approaches to using the Warm palette because that shift is lovely. And although you don't have a deeper shade than rooted here, you could probably maybe go in with warmth, or is that no? Mother Earth, just so I could stick to the palette, because practically speaking, I would probably apply my Prada wood liner on the lid, but the elastin, I think the elastin is my favorite. It's my favorite formula out of the 10 because it's just so smooth and easy to apply. Let's pick up Mother Earth and using a small shader liner brush and cut across the lid. It's not going to have the same effect as a dark brown liner will when applied in the same manner, but I think it could invite a little bit of smoke. Well, you know what we can do. I know I just applied shadow on the lash line, but I'm going over that application with my product liner in wood. Use that same shader brush to diffuse the edges. So you can stop there, but the reason why I wanted to plop down that liner is now that we have a stronger backdrop of color, I think for Mother Nature to show better on. And I'm just stamping that shadow on the lash line I drafted. And I think that's pretty. That's something you can do. It doesn't have to be brown, although I think using a brown liner will maintain that more earthy look to the shadow. But if you want that eggplant shift to just be like pow wow in your face, it'll probably be better to go in not only with the coal black liner, but a liquid liner. The liquid liner in black is definitely going to provide a stronger shift on the lash line. So that's just something for you to consider. Now to finish the rest of the eye, the lightest multi-chrome whatever we got is here, Golden Child. So if you want it, you could take a smaller brush, pick up Golden Child, which I think this elastin formula you could see here is incredibly successful with a brush pickup, and take that on the inner corner. So find that we have the same shade on lid and inner corner, but you can't go wrong with this opalescent finish as an inner corner highlight. You know what I mean? So that's like a soft daily friendly eye, I think. But if we wanted to go a little more wild, I think setting up a smokier eye first with Mother Earth on the outer corner, followed by enchantment, and then maybe a little bit of warmth on the inner part of the lid. So Mother Earth first, setting up on the outer lid. And when applying shadow in this way, I like to block it out. So not going into blending right off the bat, is more so just drafting the placement, and then you can follow up with the blend. Now with Enchanted, which is, let's see here, the smoky chartreuse. Yes, the smoky chartreuse on a good portion of my lid. I'm just tapping here, mostly keeping the application underneath my crease. That's shiny. And now warmth as our inner corner shadow, but we could also apply Golden Child on top just to brighten it a bit, but I think that's lovely. And report, this texture applies well with a brush as well as the pickup. You can see how even that is. It's shiny and it doesn't look textured, which was a great takeaway from Lightwork 6. People were expressing how, not that they don't like multi-chromes and different multi-shift finishes, is that typically those formulas tend to be a little grabby on lid texture, not as wear-friendly, user-friendly, but they found that DANESSA's formula made it completely user-friendly in regards to how these textures laid on the lids. They didn't accentuate the texture, they just kind of laid there, but still provided that shine and impact from the multi-shift. So now let's follow up. I think Mother Earth I would like to be our lower lash line shade of choice, as I want this eye to be the smoky one, but I'll pick up a little bit of Golden Child and place that on top of warmth. As I described before, that layering is going to brighten warmth a little bit just to deliver more of that highlight effect. I also want that shade to be placed on the lower inner lash line for more contrast there between Mother Earth. Now here is when the blending occurs. We could go in with either sand or rooted to blend these edges, but you could probably keep the shadow as is and use a softer brush to diffuse the edges. So as you see here, not required to actually reach for one of the soft mattes. You could, if you wanted to create a a more pronounced gradient, meaning you like that look of that terracotta brown to be included in on the fun, but you don't need it because this finish, again, let's go back to our finish log. Mother Earth is a velvet chrome, so the velvet moves quite well solo when blended softly. But if you want to see, I am picking up a little bit of rooted and just barely grazing the edges, again, to lightly introduce that shading, but I don't want rooted to completely take over the eye. It's more to create a softer gradient of color in case you want that earthier terracotta to be included in on the mix. All right, let's apply these lashes, a new lip color, and I'll be right back. Round 2 complete using the warm section of Lightwork VII. And if you're wondering what I have on the lip, it is the new Dior Sequin Lip Duo in 719 Acrobat. It's like a grungy brown, although it might look warm online. I just thought it paired perfectly with what we got going on the eyes. And if I were to take a look at what we have on the eyes, which is from Lightwork VII and what released last year in Lightwork VI. The Lightwork VI section is like electric harvest. It is warm, but you see that this year's section is a little softer, a little more demure harvest, which might be appealing to more eyeshadow wearers. And you can definitely tone down this section as I demonstrated in that review from last year, but I can understand how Lightwork VII might be a little easier to navigate because the shifts are not as vibrant and in your face. They're not as neon. And the way I approach this section for Lightwork VI is I did a lot of color blocking, or more so I just stuck to one color and didn't layer as much. I layered for this demo just so you can see more shadows in action before we move on to the next section. But that's the point, right? If you now have both Freedom palettes, you can mix and match between the two because they're both magnetic. You could even stack these, and whether it's from the Lightwork VI palette or what I have here, Lightwork VII, you could take the mirror out. It's magnetic as well. Cover your electric harvest section and you'll be good to go. So you don't have to choose between the two. You can mix and match. And listen, I think it will be killer with this shade here and let's say this shade here. What? Are you kidding me right now? Sign me up. Sign me up. This, I have to say, I know Danessa wanted to celebrate the 10-year anniversary for Danessa Myricks Beauty and release 10 new finishes for this palette, but I adore this. The velvet formula, calling it the velvet, my apologies if it's something entirely different, but it's just so smooth and easy to blend. It's kind of like that hybrid demi-matte formula that we've seen from other brands attempt at that hybrid finish. It's so lovely, and it would have been great to have the soft matte shades in this velvet formula, but I get it. Maybe there was feedback from last year where people wanted more traditionally formulated powder mattes to pair with the multi-chromes and the shifts and the foil flake that, so I get it. But that's just my little 2 cents. But looking at both at the same time, it just makes me excited. Like, if you're into these tones, my gosh, you have a full gamut of autumn bliss in multi-chrome, elastin, hyper shine, soft matte, velvet, whatever at your disposal. Now that we got the first demo complete, let's get into the wearable Taupes and Plums. I'm dying to see this color in action because I'm curious as to how it will appear. More warmish mauve or cool mauve. And start to build that crease contour. Ooh, I like that. It's not going to have as potent of a shadow effect like Rooted, but it does give me a lovely setup for the rest of the finishes in this palette. So actually, if you just wanted to wear this solo, not a bad idea. But I do want to experiment and show the flakier textures in here because again, we're looking at Guiding Light, which looks a little flaky. We're also looking at Wish. Let me refer back to our list here. Wish is the elastin sheer metallic, so maybe won't be as flaky. but I think it's Open Heart. Open Heart is all the way on the right. Open Heart is the foil flake chrome. We have here the center shade Guiding Light. Guiding Light is our foil flake. So to maybe approach this a little differently, let's just see how the foil flake Guiding Light, yes, operates with a tap and application. So you see that flake, right? This is where we might run into a little bit of trouble. Not bad trouble, just, you know, neat trouble. And I'll use a finger swipe to press down those flakes. And I think that's going to be the best approach, because you pressing down those flaky bits will ensure that it won't appear chunky on the application. But you see how even it appears and how scattered it look at my fingertip, on my fingertip, I should say. That will ensure a smoother application. So don't feel like you need a full-on swatch on the finger, because that, I believe, will be too textured for a smooth application, because you need room to actually press the flakes so that texture can spread, so it has somewhere to go. If you pick up too much, then the flakes will then layer on each other, and that's when the application can appear heavy and just too chunky, if you will, on the lid. So you're able to achieve that wet metallic shine. My goodness. But now we got to have a little bit of fun, because but I want to try Spellbound as like an outer corner moment. But now let's go into the classic magenta green shift, this time using a brush. And you can see the flakes here on the brush, where again, let's carefully press so we can get that color laid down first. And I'm pulling inwards so I can control the application and that it won't get out of hand, because I do want to tap on that darker shade on the outer corner, although you don't have to take this route. And I want to build these eye looks in a way where you can recognize the stages where you can stop, right? So if you thought these two shadows were enough before I went in with Spellbound, is it? Yes. You could perhaps follow up with a liner of your choice and then call it a day, throw on the mascara, and be done. But if you wanted to introduce another color, then you can see that the flakier texture flattened out successfully. That is important that you don't pick up too much, just enough to control the placement and the application. Now Spellbound on the lower lash line, and I'm taking this across 3/4 and reserving that space on the lower inner corner for another shade. Love Potion, one of my favorites, the Elastin Multichrome. I think ideal for inner corner. So let's plop that down, because you'll get an electric serve of that neon pink. And I'm also pulling it to the inner lower lash line. Yes, yes, yes. I'm using a small brush to control this placement. I want that pink to travel upwards, almost like it's an arc of neon pink. Now for our second eye. It looks smoky, but it's not too wild, right? So let's experiment now with what's called, let me make sure I get this layout right. Open Heart. Open Heart is the foil flake multichrome, this here. And again, you might have to push and drag to get enough on your fingertip, but recognize, see, you got the flakies here, totally fine. This is where, again, just enough on the fingertip so that the texture has somewhere to go. And I am mighty brave for using my left hand. So I'm carefully pushing the flakes around to ensure that they melt into the skin and they don't settle and grab my lid skin. So that's not too bad. Maybe not my favorite finish out of the bunch. The foil types are hard, in my opinion, because you have to maneuver them in a way that doesn't leave behind this. I have to say, from the foil flake formula so far, I much prefer the foil flake metallic, what we had applied here after the soft matte mauve, over the foil flake chrome. Foil flake chrome is okay. It's just, you got to be careful with how much you put on there. You know what I mean? But we will not fret. We're going to finish this look. So let's apply Wish, our soft mauve, and just carefully diffuse the edges of Love Potion, because for our inner lid, I would love to go in with Open Heart. No, we just applied that. Sorry, Wish. And the matte I just applied is Toasted. I'm getting all the names mixed up. No surprise here. Wish is our Elastin Sheer Metallic. It was the same texture as Warmth, that coppery shade from our first demo. And now I'll plop that on the inner part of the lid. And yes, just as I expected, shiny, smooth, easy with a brush, and I predict it will be equally so with a finger application. The foil flake chrome though has a mighty strong shift. I don't know if you could see that green shift, but I acknowledge the fact that it's multi-shifting, okay? I might not be crazy about the ease of application, but you know. Spellbound, what we applied here on this side, I am repeating here on our second eye because I don't want any fallout from the flaky achy-achies. I haven't tried the foil flake chrome with a brush application, and this is my Bobo Bishadow Collab Kolinsky eye brush that is just ideal for these types of more finicky textures. It picks up enough. You know, maybe you'll have to pick up the foil flake chrome with the brush and not your finger. Maybe a finger pickup is too much for this texture, and that's just something you have to experiment with yourself. And layering Love Potion over that elastin, again, just to give it more of a pop of highlight, and also here on the lower inner lash line. All right, let's apply these lashes and I'll be right back. Wearable, Taupes, and Plums. I have to say, the foil flake chrome is growing on me, as I probably should have waited for the texture to just melt onto the skin. We've seen that before with other shadow formulas that might be drier on the initial application, but once it settles onto the skin, it appears more shiny and glass-like in finish, and I definitely recognize that from the foil flake chrome. So you gotta spend a little time on it, maybe not pick up as much product, but my goodness, I am multi-chrome, hyper shine, metallic foiled out. And of course, I threw on the Sequin lip duo in 520 Illusionist because this was the mauve, and I thought, you know, it will make sense to put the lip on with this eye palette. And I love this little palette because you can't go wrong with these shades, but I still like the warm section more, the warm palette, because of the forest green eggplant shift. I just think that's such a unique color combination, and these are great, right? But realistically, I would reach for the warm palette more often because those are just my shades. That's in my wheelhouse favorite. These are pretty though, for sure. Don't know how often I would use it. And I gotta say, I think last year's section is more user-friendly. This year's from Lightwork VII is a lot more foil flakiness, right? Whereas from last year, where you have two of my favorite velvet formulas in the magenta and purple, and then you have what was my most favorite out of all the formulas in Lightwork VI, this like ultra shiny elastin something, I forgot what it was called, but you can see that the pinks in here, they're easier and they have more of a wet shiny look and finish to the skin versus the flakier textures that exist in Lightwork VII. And that's just something for you to decide on. I definitely prefer the palette from last year. And I gotta say, this is from last year's palette. This is from this year's. Last year's like pink opal was like had a little more of a white base to it. It was a little more powdery. And this year's is definitely a little more translucent. So perhaps this was an upgrade in formulation from Lightwork VI, but I do like this arrangement better color story wise. Now, it might be up to you in deciding if you prefer the flakies, but I do acknowledge that the flakier texture does leave behind more of a high shine reflect on the lid, for sure. But it might take a little more handling, being more careful with the application and how you place the flakier textures on the eyes. But again, it all comes down to you having the freedom to customize these shades, pans, palettes to whatever you like. So if you're not crazy about the foil flakies, whatever, you just take those out and then maybe put in another formula from last year's palette and mix and match as you like. Or like I demonstrated with the warm palettes, you just bring them together and along for the ride. I even had the pastel palette on standby. Where'd she go? I think this will be a fun time, right? Even if you have that mint seafoam there, to have the middle column at your disposal with this year's section with the plums and the taupes, not a bad idea. All right, we got one more to go. We got the blues, the cool tones, and ooh, I'm looking forward to that. So hang tight, let's take this off and I'll be right back. Effortless cool tones are next, and ooh, I have to prep the lids. My apologies, pardon me. Definitely want to go in with that concrete gray, as it is one of my more favorite neutrals to work with. Although I don't do so often, every time I apply a gray like that, I'm like, oh, I should do this more often. Picking up Magic Moon with a softer touch brush because I want to have a little more control, as I suspected, just based off the swatch, okay? Okay? I knew it was going to lay down on the heavier side and be a little more grabby when it comes in contact with the lid, but going well so far. I like to tap in pull because that helps with even distribution and allowing the brush to glide over the skin so it doesn't appear splotchy on the application. My plans for this eye is to pair Magic Moon with one of like the high shine platinum finishes on here. Specifically, let's see, either Northern Lights or Dreamer, one of these two. But you most certainly can go in with Star Power. That's going to have that icy blue reflect effect, especially when you layer it over Magic Moon. We can do that, but I'm reserving that for inner corner purposes. So let's actually go in with Northern Lights, and I'll pick up just enough, and let's refer back to our guide here. Northern Lights, we got the Velvet Metallic, which makes me excited because this is just incredible. And we'll start placing that on the lid. And as suspected, it has a beautiful shiny scatter effect there when laid down. And I could follow up with a brush just to see what that application is like to get a cleaner lay down here in and under the crease. I'm gently tapping so we can have, ooh, that shiny and silvery, but I want to make sure this gray is appearing a little more diffused through the crease. Okay, now, as promised, I would like to follow up with Star Power. Star Power is a Dreamer. Sorry, Dreamer. Dreamer is the chrome topper. This is the only chrome topper of the palette, and this is the texture we're working with. Now I'm going in with a brush because I need to be a little more precise. That's not bad. Maybe I need something stiffer, because the stiffer the brush, the more successful I think we'll get. There we go. So that's what we're looking at texture-wise. And yes, I get much better placement there, but it's hard to see from this distance. You do get the flakies that you might have to go in with a finger, ensuring that they lay more flat. But I like that. So far, so good. And because we now have grounded, is it? Yes, I got it right. Along the lash line, if you wish to. You could keep this as is. You could even add grounded more so on a larger portion of the outer corner to create a heavier bracket of intensity and smoke. But I am now relying on the black soft matte to create more definition across the lash line, just so that there's a little more contrast there. What I usually do with a icy silvery lid, Personally, I don't like it to be solo icy silver. Having the black lash line, I believe, just pulls it all together where it doesn't look, for lack of a better word, like something's missing. Like the look is not complete. You stopped in the middle, you just slapped on lashes. Although if the lash band was thick, perhaps you don't have to, or more so you could skip this step. But if you're using a thinner lash band, one that is invisible, then I think applying a little bit of a black liner situation is more flattering, in my opinion. Taking a little bit of Magic Moon, because I want more of that gray, yes, to travel across a larger portion of my crease. Okay, we like. Now I got this blue. This is like, or reminds me of Mother's Pat McGrath Blitz Blue, but Mother's Love, how appropriate. This is a hyper shine metallic, and I think we can see what that does. Ooh, with a finger application, that's melty LT. I'm gonna try to get it moving and grooving so it can spread across the lid and I can move that texture around, yeah. Following up with a brush, definitely with my Bobo and Bishido collab Kolinsky, because I need the stiffer bristle, the more elastic, springy bristle to ensure an even lay down, as well as a more precise serving of color. I gotta say, the blue's a little tight. I think it performs better with a finger tap, because when you start blending it, the texture is getting a little chunky. But I'm gonna let it sit. We're not done with the eye look yet, so I'm not panicking, okay? I do wanna follow up with the black. I'm gonna be careful, however, because I will now punch a little bit of grounded on the outer V, and I also want some through the crease. But instead of using this brush, which I think probably a little too large for my crease, well, maybe not with another shade, but with the black, something smaller to exercise more control over the blend so it doesn't travel so high close to the brow. Yes, and I'm taking a little more, same brush, because I want the black shadow to, yes, go in closer to the inner part of the eye. Okay, got a little crazy, but it's fine. I'm gonna do this, yes, yes. Nothing like a finger flick to help erase any mistakes that might have occurred. Bringing this out a little bit. This is not bad, it's getting there. I know it looks a little crazy, but we're gonna be fine. I wanna make sure I use an appropriately sized brush for the outer lower lash line. See, because I don't want this to get crazy where it drags too low. Okay. This is looking a little messy because we gotta fix. So what we can do is capitalize on the black shadow and apply, I think, well, we got two choices. We could go back in with Dreamer. We saw in action here on the inner corner, but will now be emphasized or brought more forward because of the black backdrop, right? However, we could also go in, because this was Northern Lights, Star Power. Yes, Star Power is another hyper shine metallic, what we see in the blue. That's gonna be crazy. But you know, I think this is, we gotta go there. We have to commit. Star Power. Kolinsky brush time. Oh my goodness me. I'm tapping off a little bit and press and drag. Not with a ton of pressure. It's kind of a press and sweep, if you will. Yes. Oh, okay. Dreamer on the center. That's gonna bring forward, yes, that neon blue effect, and you gotta use your finger to kind of push away those flakies that don't want to settle onto the skin. I'm just trying to fix this black because my goodness, this black packs a punch. It is intense. And why not? Let's go in with Northern Lights as our inner corner highlight of choice, because I think that would be a lovely effect as inner corner highlight. and will also appear more dazzling when applied on Star Power. I'm also taking a little bit here on the lower lash line, and why not Mother's Love here on the lower lash line on top of everything, just making it all. We got a little bit of fallout. I'm afraid I have to bioderma that off. It just stuck too closely, and it might just have to be one of these do-overs, or rather these eye looks that you have to apply makeup, your eye makeup first, and then go in with the face makeup, because that black shadow does not play around, nor does the Hyper Shine Metallic in Mother's Love, because I have quite a bit around the nose here. So we'll apply the concealer, we'll choose a fun lip, lashes, and then we'll get back with the final demo. Final demo complete using the Effortless Cool palette of Lightwork VII, and you can see that they're impactful, they're shiny, they're silvery. You could definitely lean more towards the silver Hollywood glam look of things if you didn't want to apply the blues on there. And I'm just noticing I got a little too much blue here on my lower inner corner, so don't mind me as I try to buff that away. It's strange, even though Mother's Love is classified as a Hyper Shine Metallic, the Enchanted shade that's also a Hyper Shine Metallic, or no, excuse me, this shade here is a lot easier to lay down than the blue. The blue was like tighter and a little tough to move on the lid, in my opinion. And when I went in with the brush started to move the shadow that was already on there, so it was starting to become uneven and spotty. So it's interesting, there are some inconsistencies within the categories that hold more than one color, and the one that holds more than one are two: the Hyper Shine Metallics and the Soft Touch Mattes. Those are 5 in all from all 18 shades. So the easiest one to handle was the warm section. Even though you have the multi-chromes and what have you, I think because it doesn't have those flaky textures, in my opinion, I think it's easier to apply and deal with. But if we were to compare last year's to this year's, at first glance, this year's looks more wearable because of the inclusion of the gray and the black. But I think last year's is easier to apply because they don't have these flakier textures. They're easier to pick up with a brush, to lay down. This is one of my most favorite. This is like glassy shiny. And this one here is the one I think that's one of the flakier textures, but you can definitely smooth it out. So it has a flatter finish and something that just looks better, in my opinion, when worked on the lid, and it's not as tight and it's not as flaky as Mother's Love. So Lightwork VI offers, I think, an easier user experience despite the fact that it might not include the black and the gray matte, which I understand could allow for the looks to be more not as color heavy if you don't want to use the blue. But like I had demonstrated with other palettes, you most certainly can apply the blue on the lower inner lash line instead of on the entire lid. I just wanted to showcase the texture so we can see how it works, how to handle it. Overall, do you need this if you already have Freedom Lightwork VI? Like I had said at the beginning of the video, if you are a hardcore DANESSA fan, then that is an immediate yes, because again, this release is limited edition. Don't know if DANESSA will decide if she'll do maybe one more round, if this round sells out, and then call it after that. I do acknowledge how Lightwork VII's arrangement with the inclusion of the soft mattes makes it less intimidating. It seems that when mattes are present, perhaps those who are not quite sure or are apprehensive about the flakier textures and the multi-chrome finishes, when you have a matte, that's like your anchor. That helps to kind of diffuse the edges, to perhaps start the look so you have somewhere to go, that you could just have the all matte eye and maybe lightly tap one of the dazzle finishes in a lightweight manner and call it from there and not have an intense look as you see here. But I have to say that last year's palette, Lightwork VI, and the formulas found in that palette overall are easier to deal with. You have a lot more foil flake textures in here in Lightwork 7, and you have ones that are tougher to lay down the lid. I think out of all the ones, like I had said, the Hyper Shine Metallic, not necessarily a category on a whole, is the toughest. Mother's Love is the toughest shade out of the 18. Second would be Open Heart. And then everything else from there is pretty easy. And again, Enchanted and Star Power, both in the Hyper Shine Metallic, not as difficult as Mother's Love. Even Spellbound, which I applied during the Wearable Taupes and Plums demo, even though that was on the flakier side, it was still easier to at least pick up with a brush and lay down with a brush on the outer corner. And my apologies for not designating which shades are safe for lip. On the back, I believe, on the back of each section, it will outline which shades are not safe to use on eyes or even on lips. It says here, shade Spellbound, Toasted, Open Heart do not use on lips. So it's on the individual section palette basis for you to check out. I mainly demonstrated the shades on the eyes, but you can use this entire palette. Again, it is a face palette on the eyes, lips, cheeks, and face. I would suggest you might use not the flakier textures, but like the Elastin multi-chromes as highlighter, because it's going to leave behind that opal iridescent flip on the cheekbones, which I think will look quite lovely, especially if you're creating something more ethereal and fairy-like with the entire look. And before this release, we had the Color Fix sticks, and that was an exciting time because it was like sparkle delivered in a stick form. And one of the more easier ways to achieve that high sparkle finish on the eyes, where you don't necessarily have to use a brush, or you could just tap the tip of the stick and then go on with the blend, and there you go, you're done. Because of that, the Color Fix sticks are a more practical choice if you wanted the Danessa experience along for the ride. If you're packing makeup for a trip and you wanted that sparkle foil finish, then the Color Fix sticks are a way to go. But you could also argue that this isn't bad either, to just pack maybe one of these and get the mirror lid on it to pack along. That's the entire point. The customization, it's magnetic, you could do whatever you like and how you arrange your shadows. But let me know down below if you picked up Lightwork 7, if you're thinking about it, if you're still on the fence about it. I would love to know down below, and if you made it this far, make sure you click that thumbs up. It helps me immensely in letting the YouTube algorithm know that I'm worth watching and will now continue to watch. It will also recommend my videos to other Danessa MYRICKS beauty enthusiasts such as yourself, and consider subscribing. You'll never know when I'll be back on here, maybe more looks using Lightwork 7. Or if you like what you saw today and would like to watch more, make sure you click that notification bell so you are alerted of those uploads immediately. And of course, if you are a returning subscriber, thank you for taking the time. I appreciate the watch. But if it's your first time here, please stay, peruse some more. Maybe I'll see you in this video here. I'll definitely see you down in the comments for this one. Not here again next time.